Ford and Toyota dealerships serving the Cayman Islands. Cayman Pharmacy Group, with a location in West Bay and professional pharmacy at CTMH Doctors Hospital. The Cayman Pharmacy Group has a location for you just around the corner. Seaboard Marine, with over 35 shipping ports, find your shipping solution by calling 949-4977 or visit seaboardmarine.com for competitive rates. Rotary Central. For more than 110 years, Rotary members have used their passion, energy, and intelligence to take action on sustainable projects. And Roper's Janitorial. Complete janitorial service for commercial, industrial, and residential. They get the job done right every time.
This is For the Record with Orrett Connor.
Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. For the record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
For the record. For the record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orrett Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today is Wednesday, the 29th of May, 2019. And how do I know it's the 29th of May? Because my vehicle registration expires today. And I actually went and did the renewal on Saturday at the Breakers licensing depot up there, and was very happy with the service that I got. And again, a big shout out to all of the staff there. We gave them a big shout out on Monday morning as well, Nora and her staff, and a big shout out again as well. For those of you who are traveling on the roads of the Cayman Islands this morning, whether you're a pedestrian, whether you're a cyclist, operating any type of motorized vehicle on the road, we urge you to be extremely careful. Overcast skies, we're likely to get rain. That also means that if it's raining on the roads, you need to adjust your driving habits to suit the weather conditions. So, while the speed limit may say 40 miles an hour, if the weather conditions do not permit you to drive 40 miles an hour, then you need to make that adjustment. Remember that in the rain, your visibility will be limited. Roads are wet, means you also need to give you additional time for stopping, so the distance that you drive behind other vehicles should be carefully monitored as well. Of course, already this morning I saw some idiot in the vicinity of Savannah Meadows crossing a line of traffic, driving in the opposite lane, putting other people's lives at risk. So I just want to remind you that the life you save may be your own by adhering to the rules of the road and using simple common sense when driving as well. Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I'm your host, Orrett Connor, and you're welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 10 a.m. Our phone lines are always open. There is always someone there waiting to take your calls. Now that Miss Susan Watson is on vacation, you normally hear that radio voice of Mr. Paul Akal. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flow. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. Of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, email us at fortherecord. That is one word, fortherecord at candw.ky. You can also WhatsApp us on 925-3261, where we encourage you to send us a text message or leave us a voice note. And, of course, you can follow us live simply by subscribing to Radio Cayman live stream. Before I introduce my guest this morning, I just want to point out and again to send condolences to the people of Jamaica as a result of the loss of former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Edward Seaga, who passed away yesterday. The Premier of the Cayman Islands, Honorable Alden McLaughlin, has issued a press release and sent his condolences to the people of Jamaica as well. And if the opportunity arises this morning, I will share the contents of that press release with you. So our condolences go out to the people of Jamaica who have lost an iconic figure in Jamaica, very, very prominent in Jamaican politics. I believe one article that I saw talked about him being nominated to the Legislative Council in Jamaica in 1959. Nominated to the Legislative Council in 1959, served something like about 46 years as a legislator as well, and passed away on his birthday also. So again, our condolences go out to the people of Jamaica. Condolences to those persons who have lost loved ones during the past few days or past few weeks as well. Now, with that, we're getting to that time of the year where the hurricane season starts, and it is my pleasure to have in the studio with me this morning Ms. Danielle Coleman, who's the Director of Hazard Management at Cayman Islands. Also with us, we have Ms. Teresita De Silva, who's the Planning and Preparedness Officer with Hazard Management Cayman Islands. Ladies, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, AC. Thanks so much for having us. We're really grateful. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Okay, let's start talking about hurricane season. Just start a few days away from the start of hurricane season. What can we be prepared for? Tell us about the Cayman Islands. Some people have a tendency to say, well, early in the hurricane season, we don't normally have threats. It's later down in the season that we're much more vulnerable. Is that fact or fiction?
I think it's one of those things. Again, we've already seen Andrea out there. And whilst this season we have, I think it's 15 named storms, 13 named storms, 5 hurricanes and 2 major hurricanes, which is slightly lower from last year. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the risk is there. You know, we live in the Cayman Islands. We live in this beautiful, beautiful island. But at the same time, we have that acceptable risk that we live in a hurricane-prone area. So it just takes one. Again, the risk is there. So let's make sure we're really prepared for the season. And I think it's, preparing now. I mean, at Hazard Management this year, we're really focusing on what happens after the storm passes. So we're, whether we get a storm or not this year, we have to focus on continuity of operations, how the, economics turn out afterwards. So a storm or a flooding or some event passes. What are we doing in the aftermath? What are we doing to make sure that we can get the economy up and running again, that we can respond in a very effective fashion with all the key stakeholders? But again, in order to get to that stage, we need to be prepared for any eventuality.
Okay, I think to set a foundation for our listening and viewing audience, if you can tell us about hazard management, the structure of hazard management, and where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, hazard management was set up in 2007, sort of in the aftermath of Ivan. Obviously, we had the hurricane councils and so forth before then. But there was a movement by government realising that there's all hazards that we are potentially impacted by. So, for example, this year we're focusing more on things like hazard materials, oil spills, potentially terrorism, and other related man-made and natural disasters, not just hurricanes. Obviously, today we're talking about hurricanes. But so we have a staff of 5.5 people, say 5.5, one's part-time. But we also have a big structure in the National Emergency Operations Centre that gets activated in the event of a big emergency. And that has 4 different clusters, so things like human concerns, emergency response, infrastructure, and support services. And under those 4 clusters, there's 17 emergency support teams. So we have a really good response mechanism nowadays in the Cayman Islands. And again, that's largely as a result of what we saw in Ivan. We're learning every year, and we're adding emergency support teams every year. So one of the things we're looking at this year to add to the human concerns cluster is the psychosocial support element. Well-being and support, counselling, and so forth is a fundamental issue in any large-scale emergency. So we're really trying to make sure that that forms part of the National Emergency Operations Centre moving forward. And in any big event, again, we can partially activate, so we activate certain teams and not others. But in a large-scale hurricane, we'd activate the entire team.
Let's talk about this well-being for a moment. And we saw after Hurricane Ivan that while we had maybe one or two deaths directly associated to Hurricane Ivan, the after effects of the hurricane and those people who were most vulnerable, that's when we started to see more and more persons passing. And I remember when we went over to the Turks and Caicos Islands after their hurricane, after Ivan, and I was talking to the governor and their emergency response people over there, and one of the things that we said to them is that you have to start to look out for those people who are elderly, those people who no longer have roofs over their head, because they now are the most vulnerable, because we saw it happen here in the Cayman Islands. So it is laudable and commendable that you're now focusing on that area, because it is so extremely important.
And I think you're completely right. I mean, during the actual impact itself, we have some very secure infrastructure, so people will generally go to shelter and make sure they are safe. It's the aftermath, as you say, that you see deaths, be it elderly or even not, people with diabetes or whatever it is, people with illnesses that they don't have the actual resources to look after themselves. So hence when I say we're looking at continuity of operations and the aftermath being, again, the wellness of people. How do we make sure that someone who has a medical condition can make sure they can look after themselves 2 months afterwards without any electricity or water? I think it's a really, really, really important aspect. In BVI, we saw a lot of this after Irma. And again, it's just how do we make sure that not only can the economy is sustainable, but also how do we as individuals, how do we as Caymanians make sure that we can carry on and care for ourselves, but also the most vulnerable people who wouldn't necessarily have access to that.
Okay.
And I'll speak to that as well. In terms of preparing for any event, we've also partnered with DCFS, which is Department of Children and Family Services, and we've been doing presentations to the elderly in different communities to try and identify, what their needs would be after an event, what would be their contact details, if there's any illnesses. So we would have that on hand prior to impact or prior to an earthquake or whatever the event may be, and just to have a better idea of how to help them in the aftermath. And we've also been looking at the CERT teams, our community emergency response teams, and part of their job is to identify who is vulnerable in their community. So after an event, they can go out to those persons, they can find those, they can give information back to the National Emergency Operations Centre in terms of, what persons in their community may need, if they need to be evacuated, if they need certain food, if they need to be taken into shelter. So we are finding mechanisms to try and identify persons prior to an event so that afterwards we can now provide the necessary services in a timely manner.
Okay, folks, that voice that you're hearing there is the voice of Ms. Teresita De Silva, who's the Planning and Preparedness Officer with Hazard Management Cayman Islands. Tell us more about your role, Ms. De Silva.
Well, I play I wear many hats right now. So I've been a preparedness and planning officer, which is I do presentations, I review the plans, I go into the communities, I assist with the CERT trainings in different communities by identifying what community may be vulnerable, where there may be need to be like a plug in terms of a group may need to be placed in that community prior to an event. Because what we've seen after Ivan, and although we do keep using Ivan as a benchmark, there were communities that were cut off from main town, from emergency response. So we needed to ensure that these communities had services within the community, or persons that had necessary skills to assist each other until we can get there. And one of the roles I've taken on now as well is to organize or develop different plans or exercises. And we recently just did our hurricane exercise, which focused focused a lot more on response and recovery, because what we've seen is that a lot of times we stop at the all clear. We just, do the preparedness aspect, but never think of how will we respond afterwards if some resources are lost or if communication is down. So this exercise really tried to test or just to brainstorm or get persons thinking about how would I respond if all 3 islands were hit, because that was a scenario that all 3 islands were hit. So it really starts to, get our minds thinking of what type of operational procedures would we have in place if 3 islands were hit. How would we assist if Grand Cayman is, devastated, Cayman Brac is devastated? What would we do? So it was a really good interactive exercise. It got a lot of persons thinking about continuity of operations. If persons are burnt out, if persons need to be taken over to Cayman Brac, how would we function on Grand Cayman? So it's been exciting doing these exercises. It really brings out my creative side.
Okay, folks, we're going to take a commercial break. When we return, the conversation will continue with Ms. Danielle Coleman, Director of Hazard Management, Cayman Islands, and Ms. Teresita De Silva, who's the Planning and Preparedness Officer with that organization as well. So please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly.
The Cayman Islands boasts of a long, colorful, and rich history. In tribute to our roots, Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands, is pleased to bring you the Historical Vignette Series, sponsored by Cayman National Bank. Visit Cayman National Bank today for all of your financial needs. The Cayman Islands, he hath founded it upon the seas.
In August of 1838, Andrew Malcolm of the Michael Charity of London opened the first school in Bordentown, described by the people as a good and great man who not only taught their children, fought for blacks to be educated with whites, but attended to the sick and, in the absence of an ordained minister, preached twice on Sundays. When he left in the summer of 1840, 80 parents of his non-white pupils sent a letter to the Michael Charity pleading for his return, saying, "We, the black and brown people in or about Bordentown, beg leave to return our sincere thanks for your great kindness in sending amongst us our beloved teacher, Mr. Malcolm. We are sorry that he has a great many enemies, but they are not among our class. He is persecuted by a greater part of the whites, but without a cause." Information from this historical vignette was sourced from Founded Upon the Seas, A History of the Cayman Islands and Their People, by Michael Creighton and the New History Committee.
Radio Cayman's historical facts vignettes are proudly brought to you by Cayman National, with branches on all 3 Cayman Islands. Visit Cayman National Bank today for all of your financial needs.
When you need stability, think Business of the Year.
Considering a new career opportunity, think Best Place to Work.
When dependability matters, think Outstanding Workforce.
In need of a reliable financial partner, think Bank of the Year.
When you seek excellence, think Cayman National.
No matter how many accomplishments we achieve, we always set the bar higher. That's why we are the most awarded bank in Cayman, and we are proud to be your
2018 Bank of the Year.
Why my wife always asking if I'm in a rush when she's the one always making us late?
Might as well say, yeah, I'm in a rush and go buy the new Toyota Rush you've been talking about, because they on sale this month. Dial, teacher.
The super special spring SUV sale at Vant Motors. Save up to $4,400 with SUVs starting at only $23,500, like the 7-seater Toyota Rush. Save money, get cash back, or use the discount to upgrade features on the SUV of your choice, including the Toyota RAV4, the Fortuner, the Rush, or the Ford EcoSport. It's our super special spring SUV sale. Only at Vant Motors, Walkers Road.
They say cleaning your house never killed anyone, but why take chances? Spend your time doing what you love and leave the rest to Roper's Janitorial. Complete janitorial service for commercial, industrial, and residential with 24-hour emergency service. Roper's Janitorial, 949-2511. Email janitorial@ropers.ky. Take back your life and get the job done right the first time. Roper's Janitorial, 949-2511.
My dad is the best. He was always there to protect me and guide me to be a better person. He helped shape me into the woman that I am today. But I was never prepared for the day that I had to protect and take care of him. It was terrifying and a total role reversal. But I will always be there for him like he was for me. When it comes to his medical care, I go where he always did, West Bay Pharmacy.
We know the difficulty of caring for elder family members. At West Bay Pharmacy, we can help assist you with caring for your loved ones by providing quality medicine and some of the most efficient home healthcare items possible. We provide precise calculations with your prescriptions to ensure your medical safety. West Bay Pharmacy, taking care of your
Rotary
health.
Central has worked diligently each year to provide quality bus shelters to our community. A traveling convenience to our school children, the elderly, young people going to work, guest workers, and visitors using the public bus. We, Rotary Central, help you, our advertisers, make it happen. Your marketing dollar travels a far way. Positioning your message, your product, your services, your presence in over 83 bus shelters. Every dollar you spend, every advert you place helps to build another bus shelter, providing modest comfort for Cayman travelers. Reserve space now on the only billboard medium in the Cayman Islands. Email rotaryshelters@gmail.com. rotaryshelters@gmail.com. The Bus Shelters, a partner in community convenience. Another inspiration program by Rotary Central Cayman Islands.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
Hi, I'm thinking of buying a car from the States. Which port do you ship out of?
Hi, we ship out of Miami, Houston, and Brooklyn. Just let us know your port of choice and we can provide you with a quotation and answer any questions you may have on insuring and protecting your vehicle during its journey.
Shipping shore to shore, Seaboard.
System 1 loaded.
1-800-534-8255. What is on your mind when it comes to the government, independence, and the opposition? Issues that matter to you. 1-800-534-8255. Waiting to hear from you. For the Record.
This is For the Record with Orrett Connor.
Morning and welcome back to For the Record. It is my pleasure to have in the studio with me this morning Ms. Danielle Coleman, who's the Director of Hazard Management, Cayman Islands. Also with us, Ms. Teresita De Silva, Planning and Preparedness Officer with Hazard Management, Cayman Islands. And we have also been joined by Mr. Ada Miller, who is the Disaster Manager at the Cayman Islands Red Cross. So before I throw the mic back over to my other guests, I'm going to say good morning and welcome to Mr. Miller.
Good morning, sir. How you do? Thanks for having me today.
Great to have you as well. We also have a WhatsApp question that came in from one of our listeners, and the person says, good morning. This is a question that I have for Ms. Coleman, and the question is there a shelter with trained personnel to care for our mentally disabled?
I think that's an incredibly important question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, really glad that the audience has picked up on that. We are doing a comprehensive shelter assessment currently with Public Works Department because we realise that the shelter capacity we have already on the island is very limited. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the sister islands are a bit more. They have about 50%, 100% in Little Cayman, but we are currently at about 7.58% of the population and half of those are emergency medical centres. But again, this assessment will look into vulnerable needs such as that. The mentally ill patients really do need extra help in the event of any storm and aftermath. So that might be covered in the assessment. But in the meantime, I think currently the season, we'd have to say that the hospital is the best place to deal with that until the mental health facility is up and running. As I say, part of this assessment, we're looking at new buildings that being built by government to make sure that perhaps they can be incorporated into hurricane shelters, and again with those needs, especially for the most vulnerable. So
okay, very good. Now I know that Ms. Coleman and Mr. Silva have to go. Both of you are going off to another obligation at 8 o'clock. So we want you to have as much of the mic as possible until we get to our 8 o'clock news and to cover those areas that you want to cover as well.
Yeah, funny enough, at 8 o'clock, 8:15 today, we have a meeting with London to talk about the Overseas Territories Rapid Deployment Teams. Okay. And that's one thing, again, that we're trying to push here in hazard management and, again, across Cayman Islands, to try and get teams to deploy to other overseas territories in the aftermath. Like we saw in Irma, we saw obviously the police went, and they already have an MOU with the overseas territories. But we want to extend that to health workers, to communications, to disaster response workers, to comms. So we've done a paper for it last year, and we're now trying to talk to London to make that a bit more of a reality.
Okay, and I think I saw something. Mounts Bay was in Bermuda, and they're
Mounts
doing
Bay
an
was in Bermuda
exercise
last
now,
week, yeah.
going to the Dominican Republic or something like that.
And we have the Ministry of Defence coming next in 2 weeks' time to join us to do critical infrastructure mapping. They came last year, and we did a full week with them and various stakeholders. And we also have an exercise in June, the 17th to 20th, with CMD, which is Crisis Management Division in London, the FCO office. So that'll be a full 3 days, but the exercise itself is only 1 day. It's on the 20th of June. And that will be practicing various things, both at the communication side, the situation report writing, as well as the Crisis Hub tool, which is what we're trying to initiate now, and that's a missing persons, affected persons tool.
Okay, we have one caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yeah, good morning, Lucy, and good morning to your panel.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, I have a question for the young lady there who's in charge of the hazard management. I asked a question a couple of years ago because I never understood how the houses were numbered. Because, like, I lived in the United States.
Caller, I need you to ask the question because we're running out of time. They're going to leave us at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, the thing is that the numbers on the houses, for an emergency, and you have to go to a house, and you got to 123, and then you expect the next one. And the houses are completely...
Caller, you're coming in garbled. Something is wrong with your transmission.
Yeah, the thing is that what I'm saying is that numbers are not consecutively numbered.
Yeah, I think that's a question for planning. I mean, one thing I would say that we're working with HSA on is, the spray. If by chance you're boarding your house up and you need to put a number on the wall so the emergency services can know where you are. But bear in mind, in the middle of a hurricane, the emergency services can't get out to your house. It's just the aftermath. Right. But making sure if you do board your house up, for example, you need to spray your number on the door or on the plywood to make sure they can actually see the house. I think we can check with planning as regarding that consecutive numbering and perhaps have put more thought into that. But I guess I don't have the answer to that right now.
Okay. Caller, I want to thank you very much for that question. I'm going to throw the mic right back over to you ladies.
Okay, I guess, again, we've only got a couple of minutes left with you, and we have Simon Boxall coming in as well from Hazard Management. But I guess we're just really encouraging everyone to be ready. I mean, you may hear the season's slightly lower forecast, but that means absolutely nothing whatsoever. It really does. We have the risk there. Let's make sure that we're not reacting in a very erratic fashion when we hear the alert coming in of a hurricane. We do have a bit more foresight now, obviously, with the changes with technology. We can see, the alert phase is now 72 hours as opposed to 48 hours. Mm-hmm. But again, we want you to be ready now in time for hurricane season, making sure the supplies are there, making sure your family emergency planning is in place because, the children have to be part of the process of making a plan in blue skies, not in, when we've got a hurricane coming towards our shores.
And speaking of the disaster preparedness kit, we try to encourage persons not just to have it during hurricane season because we do know that there are different hazards that can occur such as fires, flooding, potentially earthquakes. So by having a kit on hand all year round, this ensures that you're prepared and it's not just for 6 months out of the year. And I know a lot of persons only think of 6 months out of the year, I need to be prepared and that's it. But we've seen that, the world is changing, the climates are changing, and there are various different hazards that are now, posing more of a threat to Grand Cayman. So when we do our training, we talk to them about an emergency kit and not just a hurricane preparedness kit. Yes. So we're trying to, put that into person's brain that it's an emergency kit for anything. Taking the Seoul incident, for example, if persons had emergency kits, there would be no issue of them just grabbing and going. But if you don't think of, other hazards that you're vulnerable to in your area, it could be a fire in your home or flooding in your home that you will need to now evacuate and go to an alternate location.
Yeah, and if we had enough time to talk, I would, point out there that that shows where we've come from Hurricane Ivan to where we are Absolutely. Now, because, we're much more aware and we're not just simply talking about hurricanes and preparing for hurricanes.
It's every hazard out there. Yes. And again, grab and go kits in your vehicles is a really important thing. If by chance you have there's a big an earthquake and you haven't got, you're wearing a pair of stiletto shoes, it's not going to help you. So we really encourage everyone to have a small grab and go kit in their bag with just the basics.
Okay.
And prepare for pets as well.
Yes,
they're always
true.
forgotten.
Big thing as well. Okay, we've reached that hour, 8 o'clock news. Folks, please stay tuned. When we return, we will be talking with Mr. Simon Boxall and also with Mr. Eddie Miller from the Cayman Islands Red Cross as well. Folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back immediately after the 8 o'clock news.
Radio Cayman time check is now 8 a.m. This time check is brought to you by our friends at Price Right. Live better for less.
Price Right is Grand Cayman's warehouse shopping superstore, making your dollar go further with huge savings and no membership fees. Get more of the things you use every day at the right price. But it's not just grocery and health and beauty. Price Right has a full range of products from office to automotive, patio furnishings to kitchen appliances, and even electronics. And since warehouse prices mean savings for you, everything is priced right at Priced Right, Grand Cayman's warehouse shopping superstore.
The voice of the Cayman Islands.
89.9 FM in Grand Cayman and 93.9 FM in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman.
Silver wings shining in the sunlight.
Radio Cayman.
Your community, news and information. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
With your latest news, I'm Carsley Fuller. The power company blames substation upgrades for a recent string of power outages in the eastern districts. Caribbean Utilities Company says customers east of Prospect, excluding Northside, have recently experienced above normal levels of outages as CUC, quote, transitions through a very active period of substation upgrades. The company says those upgrades will increase capacity and reliability, but in the interim, in order to facilitate these upgrades, there is more vulnerability to outages. The most recent outage occurred in the early hours of Sunday due to lightning damage. More than 3,200 customers in Savannah, Newlands, Lower Valley, Boddentown, Frank Sound, and East End experienced interruptions between 3:30 and 7:40 a.m. In June of this year, CUC will start building a new Prospect substation with expected completion in 2020. CUC also has planned major upgrades to the Frank Sound substation in 2021. Nearly invisible, sea wasps can pack a powerful punch, and they've been spotted at the Stingray Sandbar and near the North Sound's Barrier Reef. The Department of Environment says on Monday they received reports from several local water sports operators that a few people had been stung by jellyfish. 2 were taken to the hospital. The DOE has tentatively identified the jellies causing these stings as sea wasps, which are a small 2 to 3 inch species that's almost invisible. Brent Fuller is with the Department of Environment.
Sea wasps are rare in Cayman. However, recent weather conditions may be responsible for bringing them into the nearshore waters.
Anyone heading to the Stingray Sandbar or the Barrier Reef is asked to be extra cautious. And the governor's office says it stands ready to lend its support to the country and other British overseas territories in the event of a major disaster. Speaking during this year's hurricane preparedness exercise, head of the governor's office, Matthew Forbes, explains that the governor's office acts as a link to the National Emergency Operations Center and London. And when a big event like a hurricane hits an OT, a crisis center house in the UK Foreign Office is activated that will have a range of expertise.
What our main role, I suppose, in the governor's office is to talk to them and to let them know what's going on. So we would provide a number of sit reps to them from here, giving them the information that they would need to know at the other end. And likewise, they would provide us with information and resources that they can deploy locally as well.
Mr. Forbes says they've learned a lot in recent years, and there's now been some changes in the response mechanisms.
One of the things we learnt during Hurricane Irma was that our communication systems in the OTs for dealing with the outside world were not really up to scratch. We've now equipped all governors' offices throughout the OTs, including this one, with a range of satellite communication systems. So if the comm systems here do go down, we've now got the ability quite independently to put a satellite system up on the roof here within a few minutes and to establish a communications hub within the governor's office, which will provide us with the ability to set up Wi-Fi zones and have secure communications back to the UK. We can also communicate with the MOD from there as well.
Next month, Cayman, along with Kingston, Jamaica, and the UK Crisis Management Department, will roll out a number of exercises involving test information templates, a newly introduced casualty management tracking tool. Now with a check of international news, here's the BBC, which will take us out of the newscast. I'm Carsley Fuller from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
BBC News with David Austin. Boris Johnson, the bookies' favourite to become Britain's next Prime Minister, is to face trial over allegations he lied to the British public during the Brexit referendum campaign in 2016. The private summons contends his Leave campaign was lying when it said Britain gave the EU nearly $450 million a week. A government-sponsored advisory committee in Britain has recommended vastly widening the range of jobs that can be given to migrants from outside Europe. The Migration Advisory Committee said shortages were not being filled from within the EU as they once were. The U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton says it's almost certain that Iran was behind recent sabotage attacks on tankers off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. Iran has described Mr. Bolton's allegation as laughable. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has been sworn in for a second term. The 76-year-old has promised to continue his anti-corruption campaign during his next 4 years in office. There's confusion in Angola about the whereabouts of the body of the former UNITA rebel leader Jonas Savimbi, who was killed in battle 17 years ago. His body was due to be handed over by the government to UNITA on Tuesday, but UNITA says the government has backtracked. Iraq has handed Turkey more than 180 children born to Turkish parents who are suspected of having joined the Islamic State group. Thousands of children of IS fighters are said to be stranded in camps in Iraq. That's the latest BBC News.
Access. Information. What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
How would you like to drive off in a brand new 2019 all-white Mercedes-Benz CLA 250? On Saturday, June 1st at Mango Tree, you could be that lucky person. The Lions Club of Grand Cayman presents its annual charity fundraising event, Benzorama 2019. That's right, one lucky winner will be announced at the Mango Tree on Saturday, June 1st, and that lucky winner could be you.
If you don't have a ticket, you don't have a chance.
Tickets are $25 each, or 5 tickets for only $100. Proceeds from the funds raised go towards various Lions community projects. Tickets can be purchased online at eventpro.ky, or stop by one of our ticket outlets, including Radio Cayman Studios, Funky Tangs, South Coast Bar, Reflections Food for Less, and West Bay Road SO, or can be purchased from any of our active Lions community members. Benzorama 2019. We are all winners once you support the Lions and our community.
Are you seeking information on the proper process to start constructing your home or development? Do you know how to apply for a building permit and inspection? Are you up to date with current building codes? May is Building Safety Month, and the Department of Planning has a number of events to help you stay up to date with the building and planning process. To learn more about Building Safety Month and the training, information sessions, and demos offered for free to the public, visit planning.ky.
The Weather Report is proudly sponsored by Super Stitch Sewing and Fabric Center, your one-stop household store at 39 Pasador Place, Smith Road. Still offering the best prices in town. Call 949-2833 or go to superstitch.com.ky.
New stock has just arrived at Super Stitch. Now don't take my word for it. Drop by and see for yourself. Fresh off the boat, we have loads of fabric, vinyl upholstery fabric, fabric for cushions, outdoor fabrics, and dress fabric. That's not all. Super Stitch has sewing accessories and craft items. Included in the new shipment, you will find sheets, comforters, throw pillows, bath mats, rugs, and curtains for every room in your home. Super Stitch, 39 Pasador Place, Smith Road. Still offering the best price in town. Call 949-2833 or go to superstitch.com.ky.
Good morning, Cayman. Let's take a look at your latest weather conditions. Compliments of our friends at Super Stitch. Present temperature 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Conditions still mostly cloudy. Relative humidity 83%. Winds are out of the southeast at 13 knots. The barometric pressure is at 29.85 and holding it. Cloudiness and showers will continue across the Cayman area for the next 24 hours as a mid to upper level trough lingers over the Western Caribbean. Forecast for today, cloudy to overcast skies with a 60% chance of showers and some thunder. Showers may become locally heavy at times. Temperatures will rise to the upper 80s. Winds will be southeast 10 to 15 knots. Higher gusts are expected in and around heavy showers. Seas will be moderate with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. Later on tonight, cloudy to overcast skies with a 60% chance of showers and some thunder. Showers may become locally heavy at times. Temperatures will fall to the upper 70s. Winds will be southeast 10 to 15 knots. Higher gusts are expected in and around heavy showers. Seas will be moderate with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. We're presently in a high tide. Low tide will be at 12:45 this afternoon, high at 7:20 this evening. For tomorrow, low tide is at 1:19 a.m., high at 6:45 a.m., low at 1:18 p.m., and high at 7:56 p.m. Sunset this evening is at 6:57, sunrise for tomorrow at 5:48, and the outlook is for a decrease in cloudiness and showers from Thursday afternoon as the mid to upper level weakens and lifts north of the Caribbean. That's your latest weather.
Superstitch Sewing and Fabric Center was the proud sponsor of the Weather Report, your one-stop shop for all of your household items, craft items, jewelry, beads, and decorations, and much more. Call Superstitch at 949-2833 or email customer care at superstitch.com.ky.
New stock has just arrived at Superstitch. Now don't take my word for it. Drop by and see for yourself. Fresh off the boat, we have loads of fabric, vinyl upholstery fabric, fabric for cushions, outdoor fabrics, and dress fabric. That's not all. Superstitch has sewing accessories and craft items. Included in the new shipment, you will find sheets, comforters, throw pillows, bath mats, rugs, and curtains for every room in your home. Superstitch, 39 Pasador Place, Smith Road. Still offering the best price in town. Call 949-2833 or go to superstitch.com.ky.
As you make your way to your destinations, traffic conditions are getting heavy at the moment, especially if you're coming out of the east. Along the east-west arterial and Shamrock Road, you have some traffic backed up there as well. As you turn on to Crew Road and onto the Linford-Pearson Highway, you'll experience some slow-moving traffic as you say, trying to make your way into town, but you got to go through the motions of the heavy traffic. Of course, turning on the Crew Road onto Shen Road, it begins to get a little quicker at that moment, but still in traffic. Along Agnes Way, very much slow, Bobby Thompson Way, and of course getting past onto Hull Avenue, onto Elgin Avenue, North Sound Road, whichever way you're heading, you'd expect the usual less congestion as you try to make your way to your destination. Of course, tempers may be up a bit, but you got to keep your cool, buckle up, and stay safe. For the Record is coming back in just a little while.
Emma, what do you think of when you hear Toastmasters?
Honestly, I think of people raising glasses and making a toast.
Really? Well, that's far from what we do. Why not come out to our event, Sounds of Expression?
Ooh, tell me more.
Well, it's going to be an awesome evening of intimate poetry, live music, and refreshments. Come out and enjoy a little taste of the diverse talents of our Toastmasters. So, will you be there?
Of course, girl. How can I not? Poetry, live music, food, I won't miss it.
Fantastic. Now, don't forget Georgetown Town Hall, May 29th at 6 p.m. Admission only $10.
A Toastmasters fundraising event proudly sponsored by Radio Cayman,
Star 92.7,
Audio Wave,
The Performance Lab,
FunFet,
Acorn Publishing, and Sings Roti Shop.
Sounds of Expressions. Visit Sings Roti Shop for tickets. All proceeds go to our youth leadership program.
At Kirk's Home Center, we can make your life much better. We got it all together. We got a great deal in store for you. From cookware to stereos, from power tools to plumbing supplies. Yeah, we got the best goods with the best price and a service to make you smile. Kirk's Home Center, we got a great deal in store for you.
Excuse me, I noticed you from afar.
Really?
Me?
Well, not you. The KFC sandwich you're eating?
Oh, Zinger.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be funny.
No, it's called the Zinger Sandwich. Crunchy, juicy, 100% chicken breast, crisp lettuce, sweet mayo on a seeded bun with a little zing. KFC's chicken is not factory breaded, frozen, and refried like the Burger Boys. Customize your KFC Zinger and dip it in barbecue sauce.
Wow, now I'm starting to notice you too.
KFC, it's finger licking good.
For the record, with Orrett Connor.
Initiating system.
For information that matters. For the record, with Orrett Connor. Continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're talking about hurricane preparedness in the Cayman Islands with the hurricane season approaching. 1st of June, hurricane season officially begins for us here in the Cayman Islands and throughout the Caribbean as well. Earlier we had Ms. Danielle Coleman, who is the Director of Hazard Management Cayman Islands. Also we had Ms. Teresita De Silva, who's the Planning and Preparedness Officer. Also joining us at that time was Mr. Eddie Miller, who's the Disaster Management at the Cayman Islands Red Cross. Now, many of you know about the Red Cross, and the question is how many of you know what the Red Cross is all about, some of the functions that it performs, the vital role that it plays in the Cayman Islands, not only during hurricane season, but throughout the year as well. So we want to hear about the Red Cross, and so we're going to ask Mr. Miller to tell us about the Cayman Islands Red Cross.
Good morning, OC. How are you, sir?
Again. Thanks
for having
being
me
here
today. Thank you. Okay, so it's a good question about our role in the Cayman Society, but the Cayman Islands Red Cross, it was founded in 1961 by Miss Ethel Cook Bodden, and on our active volunteer list we have about 200 volunteers, and we work throughout the whole of the Cayman Islands. And as we know, or a lot of viewers or listeners may not be unaware, is that the Cayman Islands Red Cross shelter is the first shelter to open in the event of a disaster. Okay, so that is the first point of contact, and as we're an auxiliary to government, Miss Coleman or HMCI and her team, they will reach out to us and for an activation, and we would actually have the shelter up and running in place in case we need it. One example of that was, I think Teresita mentioned earlier, was the Seoul fire that we had last year. When that was, we had a partial activation, we had that shelter up and running, ready in the event that we needed it. Okay. One of the key things is that we have 4 active programs in the Cayman Islands Red Cross. Disaster management is one of the main key ones, and that's focusing on preparedness and response. Okay. Another one of our programs is the first aid aquatics training. Okay, so for all the first aid volunteers, all the businesses, all members of the public want their first aid, that's a service that we offer. Another one is a child protection, sexuality education with Miss Carolina Ferreira. So she's going out into the schools, working with the RCIPS and all the government agencies. And also, as the most important thing, which is a big revenue maker for us, and that's our thrift shop, which, as we know, going back to the shelter, one of our fundraising campaigns was Shelter from the Storm recently. I just want to thank every contributed to that, because we were overwhelmed with donations, which is fantastic.
Great.
And that is basically to bring our shelter up to the current building code, because it's been there for 30 years, so we need to make sure it's renovated, up and running, and is there when we need it. So at the moment, unfortunately, it's temporarily unavailable, but we're hoping it'll be ready to go by at least September of this year.
And let's talk about your funding. How do you get funds for your activities?
Well, we have a few things going on. Obviously, you can make a donation to the Red Cross at any time, any Red Cross, and whether that's by popping in and dropping off money or by making a donation for your business. But we also do regular things throughout the year. So we have our spring-summer raffle, which we've just come to the end of at the moment, and the prize winners will be given there. And it's also just about awareness. We obviously generate revenue from our first aid training. And like I said earlier, one of our biggest revenue makers is from the thrift store. And let me tell you this, people are queuing up at the store to buy things half hour before we open. And our temporary location at the moment, in the absence of our shelter, is at the Mirko Cannon Place Centre. So it's just there at the moment temporarily. So.
And for the information for those people who would want to donate clothing and other items to the Red Cross? How best to do that?
If at the moment, if you have any items you'd like to donate and they're in a significant size, and we actually have a pickup service we can do. But for clothing and smaller items, you can actually donate it to the store at Cannon Place. And again, if you would like to find out more information about that, you can call us on our main number, which is 949-6785, and someone, one of my staff members in the office, can direct you.
Okay, great. We've been joined by Mr. Simon Boxall, who's the acting Deputy Director for Hazard Management Cayman Islands. Mr. Boxall, good morning. Welcome back to For the Record.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tracy. Good to be here, and thanks for having us on. Good to see you too, Eddie.
Morning, Simon.
Glad to be here.
Okay, earlier we had Ms. Coleman and Ms. De Silva talk about hazard management, where we are now, where we've come from, some of the activities of hazard management. So we're going to have you just continue on with that conversation, Simon.
Thank you. Well, I think it's come a long way. I mean, we've had a good foundation. You remember Dr. Barbara Kirby,
yes.
Obviously Mr. McCleary Frederick, yes. And now Danny.
Omar.
Yeah. I think there's been many developments. McCleary used to speak about it, and you were a very instrumental part of it, the National Hurricane Committee, I remember. But it used to sort of, in the early days, we would end at the all clear, but now, particularly Danny, it's got a lot of focus on the response and recovery aspects of it too, which are very important. But I just think in terms of our development of our plans and our processes, it was just really, we just had obviously a hurricane exercise a few days ago, and there was an incredible turnout. The council showed up. But we've also been doing business continuity plans for government agencies just to ensure that they actually continue operating as well, or get back up on their feet as quickly as possible. And, they're really taking it seriously this year. With the new legislation, the possibility of possibly redeploying government workers that are not assigned as critical. They're all kind of critical, but those that are needed to in the immediate aftermath. But possibility of being redeployed to shelter workers or setting up food stations. We're really trying to build resilience and capacity at all levels, not just in government, but in the communities as well.
And I see where people now, you've issued identification cards for those persons who would be involved. So in the event that there is a curfew or something like that, people are able to move around and to identify themselves as being critical.
In the utilities as well, in the sectors and things like that they have to get things up and running. It's always been a bit of a difficulty, the all clear. Sometimes we see the hurricanes come out of the east. It's sort of typical Cape Verde storms. So you might have in East End, for instance, the wind will die down, but it's still blowing at 100 miles an hour in Georgetown. So it's always been a challenge, particularly for the shelter managers, to keep people inside. But you've got the ambulances going, you've got the NRA trying to clear the roads, and utilities trying to get the wires off the streets, trying to encourage people to sort of, be understanding, be appreciative that, there may be people needing to get picked up by ambulances who have had medical issues during the height of a storm. So being patient in that all clear time is important. We were just at shelter training last night. It's just amazing, the volunteers.
Yeah, and what a turnout that was as well. I'd like to take my hat off there to DCFS for organising that, and people that are keen to volunteer to be shelter managers in the government shelters. Obviously from the Red Cross perspective, it was a good turnout as well, but it just shows to you how many people want to come out and assist in the eventuality that we do have a hurricane, and they're there to assist all aspects of the EMS and, emergency services. So it's great.
Yeah. What we're seeing in the Cayman Islands is this whole renewed sense of community and people organizing themselves in areas where they live or where they may have family members who are living. How helpful is that in terms of you being able to organize and to amass the
Well, I think,
necessary.
we recognize that the CERT teams, there was problems with attrition, people losing interest in the absence of actual impacts and events.
Mhm.
So, we partnered with Red Cross for a while. But one of the initiatives that's really worked well is these WhatsApp groups. So you see, like Miss Sabrina Turner, she's a force to be reckoned with. Amazing woman.
Prospect
The
yes.
Prospect group. But I think that has helped sort of build the kind of community dynamic with these community teams that are sort of building capacity at the kind of community grassroots level. But it's interesting how that's really helped, and we've tried to kind of offer ongoing training. Do you want to talk a little bit about how we're trying to or do we need to go to news?
Okay, no, we actually have a caller, so we're going to grab that caller first.
Right,
and
right.
Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yeah, just one quick thing here. I got to take Simon up on this. You just mentioned what you got now. You built on a good foundation. You mentioned, I think, Mrs. Darby coming in. But just to remind you that long before
that's Carby, Dr. Carby.
Yeah, you're right. Mr. Donovan Evans, Mr. Kirtland Nixon, Mr. Foster. Plenty of people laid the foundation.
Go ahead, caller.
Well, yeah, in this era of celebrate Cayman, you got to be careful with what you're saying up there, because a lot of people take it differently.
Yeah.
If you go back and review your sentence, then you'll see where we're coming from. That's all I got to say.
No, I appreciate that. Calling particular names out probably was the wrong thing. There are many, many people that. Like I said, Mr. Donovan Ebanks, Mr. O.C. Connor.
I think what is instructive there, and I understand what the caller is saying, but what you were pointing out there was that in terms of having a formal, full-time director for hazard management in the Cayman Islands, that was when we had Dr. Carby. Prior to that, we basically had senior civil servants, quite capable, people like Mr. Donovan Ebanks, Mr. Kirkland Nixon, but they had other roles as well. And maybe because of those other roles that they had and the skill set that they had, that they were able to ably fill the position, in terms of that. But the first time that we actually had a person full-time on the job and someone coming with formal training in that area was Dr. Carby.
That's right. I mean, she started hazard management. Like you say, it was the National Hurricane Committee, incredible, kept us safe for years, did an amazing job of getting the word out and preparing the country, things like the shuttering program, lots of good things. Mr. Kirkland Nixon, I mean, what an amazing man. There are many people that have sort of laid the foundation, but in terms of a formal sort of government agency which is tasked with producing plans, not just for hurricanes, but and looking at mitigation plans, mass casualty management. Yes. I mean, there's no doubt it's developed. Certainly without the pioneers that kind of did all the work in the beginning, I mean, we wouldn't be where we are today. I mean, Mr. Donovan Ebanks for so many, and Mr. Kinney Gomez. I mean, there's so many names you can talk about.
So many,
really,
so many of them, and not to forget those guys at the Met office as well. I mean, I remember during Hurricane Ivan, everyone was looking at Mr. Sambula, and everyone wanted answers from him. It was as if, he's in the brain of the storm and he knows exactly what it's going to do next. Because,
throughout the whole fraternity and the community of people in the industry as well, people still mention these names. I mean, they're always asking about Mr. Sambula. Very well respected throughout the especially in the region.
Good time for us to take a commercial break. Folks, please stay tuned. The conversation with Mr. Eddie Miller, the disaster management for the Cayman Islands Red Cross, and Mr. Simon Boxall, the acting deputy director of hazard management, Cayman Islands, will continue after this short break.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
I have various items coming from different suppliers that I need to ship to Cayman. Do you offer consolidation?
Yes. Seaboard Marine offers consolidation for full and less than container loads. We can hold your packages at our Miami warehouse until everything arrives and ship it all in one go. And we have the best rates to Grand Cayman. Visit seaboardmarine.com for more information.
Shipping shore to shore, Seaboard.
They say cleaning your house never killed anyone, but why take chances? Spend your time doing what you love and leave the rest to Roper's Janitorial. Complete janitorial service for commercial, industrial, and residential with 24-hour emergency service. Roper's Janitorial, 949-2511. Email janitorial@ropers.ky. Take back your life and get the job done right the first time. Roper's Janitorial, 949-2511.
Why my wife always asking if I'm in a rush when she's the one always making us late?
Might as well say, yeah, I'm in a rush and go buy the new Toyota Rush you've been talking about. Cause they on sale this month. Dial teacher.
The super special spring SUV sale at Vant Motors. Save up to $4,400 with SUVs starting at only $23,500 like the 7-seater Toyota Rush. Save money, get cash back, or use the discount to upgrade features on the SUV of your choice, including the Toyota RAV4, the Fortuner, the Rush, or the Ford EcoSport. It's our super special spring SUV sale. Only at Vant Motors, Walkers Road.
Support our tourism.
Wouldn't it be nice to spend quality time shopping, eating, and socializing with friends and family in Georgetown? The cruise berthing facility will stimulate the revitalization of our capital city, turning this vision into reality.
Looking forward, looking bright.
Learn more and spread the word.
Support our port, support our tourism.
System 1 loaded.
1-800-534-8255. What is on your mind when it comes to the government, independence, and the opposition? Issues that matter to you. 1-800-534-8255. Waiting to hear from you. For the Record.
This is For the Record with Orrett Connor.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're talking about hurricane preparedness because the start of hurricane season is almost here, 1st of June. In the studio, it is my pleasure to have Mr. Aidan Miller, who is the disaster manager at the Cayman Islands Red Cross. Also with us is Acting Deputy Director of Hazard Management at Cayman Islands, Mr. Simon Boxall. And we're basically talking about hurricane preparedness now, but that doesn't mean that if you want to talk about other hazards, as well, if you're a listener, and you want to call in and talk about other hazards that we may face here in the Cayman Islands, please feel free to do so as well. But we're going to talk about preparedness now, and let's talk about the level of our preparedness, starting with our reliance on predictions. We've had predictions already that it's likely to be a normal hurricane season, or we get predictions in terms of numbers. And then, of course, when it actually comes to the activity itself, we have to rely on weather forecasts and all of those things as well. Let's talk a little bit about those areas.
Thank you for that. I think there's obviously problems a little bit with the forecasting methodology. I think that we've come to rely on this system of categories, which is wind-based only. So I think a lot of people are sort of thinking, well, maybe I'll move or evacuate or go to a shelter if it's a category 3, 4, or 5. But the wind is the measurement solely for the category system, and we know that that's really not measuring up well in terms of some of the other hazards associated with hurricanes. So we're seeing storm surge and waves to a degree as kind of our primary threats. And again, the category is not a good measure of that. So we're seeing, what we worry about is a Category 1 or a Category 2 hurricane bringing 10 to 15, 20 foot of surge, and people not realizing that that's a possibility with a Category 2 hurricane. They think that that's only something that could happen with a major, and that could be a life-threatening mistake. So often the amount of surge is more directly correlating to the size of the wind field. So if you have a very big system like a Mitch, it doesn't necessarily have to have 150 mile an hour winds. I mean, it could be 120 mile winds, and you could have 12 to 14 foot of surge and waves on top of that. The waves can only be 1.5 times the depth of the water. So with a 12-foot surge, you're looking at a 12 plus 18-foot wave on top of that. Each cubic meter of water weighs a ton. So you're looking at a lot of single-story houses, even in the Georgetown area, in low-lying areas that are, possibly, looking at the sea coming up all the way to the roof of the house. And so that's a huge concern for me that, people aren't going to evacuate and seek safe shelter for the Category 1, Category 2 systems.
One great example of that Simon just raised was Hurricane Sandy in New York a couple of years ago, and that was a Category 1, or just barely a Category 1 hurricane.
Right.
And that produced some of the worst storm surge and flooding that New York area has ever received. So that is a great example to put people's minds in perspective that don't necessarily think Category 3, 4, 5 are going to be the worst that we could be hit by. For that exact reason that he brought up.
And on the other side of that, I mean, there's a lot of people in Cayman who went through a Category 4 Hurricane Paloma, but the wind field was actually a radius of only 7 miles, so it was very, very small. So you didn't really see much surge coming up for that event. I mean, very powerful winds, terrible experience. But it can be a very dangerous mistake just to judge a system on the category. So that's why our local weather services are so important. The other thing that I'm really a little bit worried about is this what we call anchoring. People that have been through a very violent, very strong hurricane have just sort of made up in their minds. They can't conceive of the possibility that another hurricane could be more powerful, or that it could come from a different angle with a broader wind field. So, we ran a scenario in the hurricane exercise where we lifted the track up for Paloma and then broadened the wind field out to a big hurricane like a Mitch and brought it in at about where Royal Palms is. And we ran the numbers, the models, showed about a 20-foot surge. So on 7 Mile Beach, on top of that, you were looking at a 30-foot height of waves. So that was going through like the second floors of like the buildings on 7 Mile Beach. And that's a realistic scenario. So people just can't sort of picture the possibility that something could be substantially worse than Ivan, like twice as much surge. So, this kind of fixed thing in people's minds that it just can't be any worse is very dangerous.
Yep. And, one of our listeners, and earlier we had someone call in about the numbering system, and this person has written in and said buildings are numbered because the person who called in was talking about the numbering system and these gaps in between. And so this person has written in and said buildings are numbered in accordance with the distance from the start of the road. Number 12 suggests 120 feet from the start of the road, whereas 55 indicates that the property on which the house is located starts 550 feet from the start of the road, etc. Hope this helps.
I do remember talking to Mr. Alistair Ayres about it when the numbering system was established, and there was a sense. I mean, obviously, one side of the road is alternate, so even numbers, but they were leaving space, I think, for the possibility of additional development, increased density. So it does seem a bit confusing. Why don't you just number them? But if something gets built in the middle,
and with GPS and everything else, it makes navigation so much easier these days. We have a caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. O.C., and good morning, Mr. Simon, all those who are in studio there.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Good morning. I think that's my friend from the BRAC.
Yeah, that's Raymond. Correct, Simon. Yes, welcome to the radio again.
Thank you. I always
we've
love
been having
listening to you, Lloyd's of London Signal Station.
Yes, sir. We've been having some downpours of rain here in Cayman Brack this morning. It's still raining. Very rainy day, looks like. Okay, I had something that may be interesting or interesting to the public. A friend of mine said he recorded during Hurricane Paloma on the Bluff, Cayman Brack, 183 miles per hour velocity, wind speed, reached to 183 miles per hour.
That's very interesting. The way they calculate...
And they said that we did not have a Category 5 hurricane, but the evidence that I seen around, it did reach that, and that's proof right there. The person said they watched it in their house on the winometer, 183 miles per hour.
I don't doubt that. And the higher you go, the higher the wind speed. So the way they calculate the wind speed in a hurricane officially for the forecast is, or for the statistics, I think is continuous. It's measured over a minute.
It has to be sustained.
Sustained wind over a minute, and it's 10 feet above sea level. But as you go up in elevation, that you'll see that increase in wind speed as well. So it's possible while it was, and I don't doubt it for a minute, 183 on the top of the bluff there, it was probably 20 miles an hour slower than that at the official level that they record and the sustained wind speed.
Okay, we want to thank that caller for that. We have another caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning. Good morning to your guest.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning, ma'am.
Morning.
I'm wondering if they have people put in place. Why I'm saying that? Because I was with the Red Cross. I was trained by the Red Cross in Ivan. Put in place to the shelters, which I was trying to get one good one for West Bay, but that's not happening. And if you have people put in place that, like say the shelter manager, that would know who is going to work with them from the Red Cross, and a doctor, like we had Dr. Ruthlin, with us at the West Bay School Hall. If you're going to, if they would know each other before, God forbid, a disaster happens, so they'll know who they're working with. And the shelter manager and her assistants or his assistants should know all about the place, because make I tell you, it was a sad case at the school hall in West Bay. I worked there 4 nights straight without any sleep, because we didn't have any place to go. People didn't know where the generators were. If it wasn't for Mr. Mendez, like Mr. Locklear said, don't mention names, because it was too many. It was too many. And make I tell you, I'm not saying this because I can talk. Some of them that we thought were well-trained, they went home. They left us. They went home. They were well-paid, but they went home. So I hope and pray that we'll never have a disaster, because it don't seem like it's enough training. It's just names that are called, but it is never enough training. And I mean that because I have experienced that. I am sorry to say these things, but things got to happen that feet have to be put down, especially if you're paid. The all clear was given by Mr. Dwayne Ebanks from Northwest Point, not Sterling Dwayne, but Dwayne Ebanks from Northwest Point. Denny Groves from the police force, which is still in the police force. He was the police at the and thank God for him and Mr. Mendez. Anyway, I'm not going to call names, but I'm wondering if these things is going to be put in place or just mention about it.
Okay.
Thank you, and good morning.
Thank you very much. We have Mr. Miller here from the Red Cross, so you can talk about the aspect of it in relation to the Red Cross.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point she's bringing up there about the familiarisation of the shelters and potentially the staff that you're going to be working with and assisting. And I know that yesterday Simon mentioned we just concluded our government shelter management training. We as a Red Cross, we also have our own shelter management training for our volunteers or volunteers who are keen to be a shelter manager. However, we don't hold back and we inform them that we do understand that it's a big responsibility if a time comes, and the guys need to know that before they sign up to it, because like she was stating there, if people feel last minute that it's something that isn't for them, that's not going to be very helpful to any of us. So we really make sure that in the training we highlight that. We stipulate it on many occasions during the 2 days that we put on to begin with, that if you sign up, your name is on a database and you'll be called. But also, in terms of logistics, at the back of the guides that everyone got issued at the training yesterday, one good thing there was an appendix with actually the blueprints of all the shelters, which I thought was a fantastic idea, just to highlight where the things are in there. So even if, unfortunately, you're not familiar with it, it does show you where the points of interest are in that shelter, the exits, the entrance, restrooms, etc. And our Red Cross volunteers as well will be assigned to those government shelters along with our own public shelter. And obviously, logistics-wise, if you're in West Bay, you're a volunteer from West Bay, in an ideal world, you'll go to a West Bay shelter. But as we know, things happen and people might be in town at that time and, it's not safe for them to go back to there. So at that point, we'd have to think about things. But I think it's a fair point she's making. Familiarisation with the staff and the people you're going to be working with.
Certainly. Let's take a commercial break, folks. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Okay.
The Cayman Pharmacy Group would like to thank the Cayman communities for their continuous support for over the past decade. CTMH Doctors Hospital Pharmacy opened its doors in March 2000. West Bay Pharmacy first opened their doors in March 2004. The Cayman Pharmacy Group was established in July 2007. Throughout the years, our CPG family has provided more than just pharmaceuticals to our loyal friends and customers. The Cayman Pharmacy Group has protected the lives of our medical community by securing the best healthcare advice and pharmaceutical services. To us at CPG, you are more than just a number. So, we are taking the time to say thank you for choosing CPG. The Cayman Pharmacy Group, taking care of your health.
Since 1993, Rotary Central has worked diligently each year to provide quality bus shelters to our community. A traveling convenience to our school children, the elderly, young people going to work, guest workers, and visitors using the public bus. We, Rotary Central, help you, our advertisers, make it happen. Your marketing dollar travels a far way. Positioning your message, your product, your services, your presence in over 83 bus shelters. Every dollar you spend, every advert you place helps to build another bus shelter, providing modest comfort for Cayman travelers. Reserve space now on the only billboard medium in the Cayman Islands. Email rotaryshelters@gmail.com. rotaryshelters@gmail.com. The Bus Shelters, a partner in community convenience. Another inspiration program by Rotary Central Cayman Islands.
Ahoy! Pirates Week food and craft vendors reserve your stall starting June 3rd. All food vendors must use biodegradable containers and utensils. And don't forget, a valid food handling certificate must accompany your application. Learn more at piratesweekfestival.com or call 949-5078. There's limited space, so register early starting June 3rd.
While the primary source of alcohol for underage drinkers is people they know, research shows that 7 to 9% of those who report alcohol use in the Cayman Islands purchase alcohol directly from retailers. Tips Off Premise helps retailers focus on verifying the legal drinking age when selling alcohol. Since the program was introduced here in the Cayman Islands back in 2005, we have trained over 400 persons and partnered with over 10 retailers. Contact us on 949-9000 to have your staff trained today. This message is brought to you by Radio Cayman and the National Drug Council.
For the record, with Orrett Connor.
Initiating system.
For information that matters. For the record, with Orrett Connor. Continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're talking about hurricane preparedness in the Cayman Islands. Hurricane season starting on the 1st of June, a few days away. The conversation is taking place with Mr. Simon Boxall, who is the acting Deputy Director of Hazard Management, Cayman Islands. Also with us, we have Mr. Ada Miller, who's the Disaster Manager for the Cayman Islands Red Cross. Earlier in the conversation, we're talking about business continuity. And I believe the focus may have been mainly on government. As far as the private sector is concerned, we certainly rely on them, and we know that they have their business continuity plans in place, whether it is to relocate off the island if something happens and it is that bad that they have to relocate staff as well as their businesses. But those businesses who are unable to relocate, we saw after Hurricane Ivan the challenges that we had in terms of deciding who should get electricity first, where should power be put. Should we be looking at the people who are more vulnerable, or should we be looking to get the business community up and running, because that is our lifeline? Are we likely to face scenarios like that in the future, or do we have those things sorted out now as far as business continuity is concerned?
It's a great question, and it's important, as you say, it's a lifeline in the economy. And we saw Tortola took a long time to recover. We took a long time after Ivan, as you know, as a recovery coordinator in that event. Months for the electricity to come on and water. We've become very dependent on internet, business, very dependent. We have a emergency support team in the National Emergency Operations Center structure that is specifically tasked with utilities, and then another one, communications, telecommunications. And I think it was actually in the exercise, I really looked at this aspect. We ran a number of injects, and we were just looking at this. And I think we actually have built a lot of resilience. Some people will say, well, you could bury we could try to encourage CUC to put the electricity underground. Possibly that would help. It probably would. But we have concrete poles. They have relationships with the companies in Canada and Fortis, or MOUs around the Caribbean. And they have identified the priority areas, where they need to reconnect to get both the critical infrastructure for government up and running, hospitals, police stations, so on, but also some of the kind of key corridors for business. So I'm actually, it's quite reassuring in terms of that. In terms of the likelihood of a sustained outage for water, again, they've built resilience. It's more robust, the system, and I think we've got a lot of water stored, hundreds of thousands of gallons. So we're not going to run out of we're not going to run out of water. There will be water. There may be a period where it's not coming out of people's taps, but if necessary, we've got additional substations for electricity, additional reservoirs up in Rum Point area. There's now we've looped around the Queen's Highway. So water, electric, and even communications, I think, is, we've got additional towers up, new tower up in West Bay, and it's highly unlikely all the towers will fall. It's a possibility one or two may go down. But I think we should be able to see most of our utilities come back within a couple of weeks, 2 to 3, 4 weeks, at least for the core area. So I think we're in a much better position as far as our utilities. A lot of planning has gone into it, a lot of work by CUC, the water company, Flow, Digicel, and do you want to add anything to that, Eddie?
No, it's important to, like you said, it's a double-edged sword really, because obviously you need people to recover, but obviously the economic continuity's got to keep on going as well, so people are going to be out of work, so it is important when you're talking about prioritising who gets electric first and all those things. I don't think there's a priority per se, however, we know it's important that people need to get back into work as soon as possible, start earning the money again, and also to keep them occupied as well, because as you said, when you're idle after the event of a disaster, it plays tricks on your mind a little bit. As you can see, as the recovery coordinator, you need to keep active and feel like a sense in the community still.
Now, sorry, Simon.
No, a lot of people now obviously have generators built up on pads, much higher up. People are planning a lot better. They have 100%. Business continuity plans. So I think we're a lot more resilient. There's still obviously vulnerability for the tourism sector. We don't want to show off our product to the world before it's sort of looking back in order. So there's a cleanup period that is inevitable almost.
Now, Simon, you spoke about things like some people may not have water running out of their tap, which brings me to the point of in terms of individual preparedness. We know that every season, every year, you put out information. There are booklets. There's, everything. How do people individually prepare? How do we advise them of doing that as well?
We say this every year. Every year. Let's not be complacent on the supplies that we need. Now, my analogy is preparedness. If it's your family member's birthday or you've got a trip planned in 3 months, everyone's well prepared for that, aren't they? They get everything they need. They get the jabs they need. They get the money they need. If you use that analogy for this, don't leave it last minute, okay? Because what we've seen over the years as well as, back to Ivan days, the panic buying of items, okay? The supermarkets and the places are going to have those items, but if everyone's just rushing in there last minute, it's just complete chaos, okay? So the recommendation for the family is obviously 1 gallon of water per person per day, okay? And you should have at least 3 days worth. Okay, 3 to 7 days worth. Non-perishable food items, canned food, things that aren't going to go bad on you, and things that have got a very long shelf life. Because like we know, we're saying 3 days, 7 days, but like Simon iterated a minute ago, these things should go on for weeks or months. Okay, another thing we really want to focus on is your documents as well. Okay, it gets overlooked every time. Make sure with technology these days, it's very easy to be able to scan your personal documents to save them somewhere. You've got password protected options as well to keep there if you feel you're a bit unsure in doing that. Passport, insurance documents, you're going to need those things in the eventuality that you do need to make a claim with your insurance company. And also personal hygiene, sanitation, health aids. Make sure you've got an ample supply and stock of that as well. Medication, over a month's supply, you definitely need it, because obviously if you're going to go seek that from other places, pharmacies, the hospital, etc., they're not going to be able to give you 6 months worth of meds. So you need to make sure that if you need that, you have it in plenty of time. So there's just a few items that we need to focus on.
Okay, we've reached the top of the hour. Headline news at 9 o'clock. When we return, we want to talk about... I've got a whole minute still? Okay. When we return, we want to talk about the more vulnerable in our society during and after a hurricane. People who suffer from various ailments that require specialized treatment. If we don't have that treatment here, or if we're not likely to have enough of it, what do we do about that? Now, I do realize that we don't have anyone from medical society here with us to talk about those, or from the Health Services Authority. But if we can cover it in some way or the other, I think it would be useful as well. So, folks, please stay tuned. When we return, the conversation with the Acting Deputy Director of Hazard Management, Cayman Islands, Mr. Simon Boxall, and the the Disaster Manager, getting this all, Disaster Manager for the Cayman Islands Red Cross, Mr. Eddie Miller, will continue. So please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly.
Continuing the Caymanian tradition.
Let Cora keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
Let's read the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman. Radio Cayman's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
Opposition members welcome and congratulate the Cruz peer campaigners for reaching the threshold triggered to require a people's-initiated referendum. The leader of the opposition, the Honorable Arden McLean, says official members support the Cruz peer campaigners achieving a, quote, historic first. He goes on to say their determination in the face of government machinery operating against them is a triumph for people power and the steadfast belief that government should work for and with, not against, its people. 16 people have been charged in Bangladesh over the shocking murder of a teenager who was burned to death after reporting sexual harassment. 19-year-old Nusrat Jahan Rafi was doused with kerosene and set on fire on the roof of her Islamic school on April 6th, days after filing a complaint. Her headmaster, targeted in the complaint, is one of those charged. And U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton has said, quote, naval mines almost certainly from Iran were to blame for the damaged oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman earlier this month. The attacks off the eastern coast of United Arab Emirates on May 12th left holes in the hulls of 4 ships. Those are your headlines. I'm Karsley Fuller.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands and sponsored by One Trade X. Join Money Sense this Thursday, 7:30 a.m. as we interview Rob Tate, CEO and founder of Global Rational Capital, one of Cayman's newest and locally managed investment companies. Listen as we quiz Rob on how he goes about researching companies and deciding what to invest in. Tune in this Thursday, 7:30 a.m. and learn how to improve your investment research processes too. Follow us on Twitter and tweet questions to @MoneySense Radio. Money Sense, the only personal finance radio show in the Cayman Islands. Brought to you with the support of One Trade X.
For the record, with Orrett Connor.
Initiating system.
For information that matter. For the record, with Orrett Connor. Continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're talking about hurricane preparedness in the Cayman Islands. That conversation is taking place with Mr. Simon Boxall and Mr. Eddie Miller. We gave you a preview of what we wanted to talk about next, the most vulnerable in our society during a hurricane, after a hurricane as well, and what do we need to have in place for them as well. So many people... the numbers in terms of patients requiring dialysis increasing in the Cayman Islands, increasing in the Caribbean in general, as well. We saw, I believe it was after Hurricane Ivan, we actually relocated people from the Cayman Islands over to Florida to continue their dialysis treatment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that question, and it's definitely an area that we're interested in, we're concerned about, and we're working with the Cabinet Office, actually, particularly with the elderly population. We've noticed, Irma, Maria, even our own experience, Ivan, and to a degree Paloma, that there's increased mortality rates for elderly people. They're not as possibly they need their medication to be kept cool if within the absence of power, like you say, dialysis. Some people are dependent on electricity for continuing medical treatments. Transportation is compromised at times in the aftermath. So we've actually partnered up with Children and Family Services this year, and we're taking active measures. We were in the community yesterday in Boddentown with an elderly group, and we're trying to establish now a register of people that might need additional support, maybe to get back and forth to the district health centres, to the hospital, might need transportation to the shelters, may need support putting up shutters, trimming back trees, drying their house with tarps in the aftermath of an impact. Even a bag of ice is a pretty heavy thing for an elderly person, and they don't have an income coming in. They're not as able to bounce back in some cases. They don't want to add to the stress levels of their family members who are also dealing with the recovery process in the aftermath. But people with serious medical concerns and issues, the shelters aren't really able to deal with people with serious mental health issues, dementia, and some medical conditions, open wounds and things like that. I think we have to accept that it's kind of a work in progress. At some point we're going to need a special needs shelter. We're progressing towards a mental health facility which should assist. But I think this also emphasizes the need for people to have their travel documents and things in order and ready. Because there's some people that, it just may be, they may need to leave urgently for some reason. It doesn't have to be a hurricane season thing. But particularly in the hurricane season, if you've got your travel documents, at least you kind of got the option to go up to Florida Baptist Health, so on and so forth. But it's a big area, and there are other vulnerable groups. We've got tourists who are potentially vulnerable. Yeah. We've got communities, people with different who use primarily other languages. Possibly there are some working groups of people that don't depend on Radio Cayman as their number one source of news and information. They're, who knows? So we're trying to look at all these vulnerable groups. But I think you raise a very important point, and it's an area we're trying to focus more attention on. I don't know if you want to add anything or whether.
Well, no, like you said, with vulnerability groups, I know the needs assessment unit is also there in government to assess the people who obviously, don't have the funds or need the assistance from the government in the aftermath as well, with funding or housing, etc. So, like Simon said, there's a few other vulnerable groups that are there and work in progress, and just establishing the shelters for people with those issues as well. Yeah,
I know that the United States government, they were extremely helpful and generous to us after Hurricane Ivan. The political climate in the United States is not the same now as it was in 2004.
They waive visas and things like that.
Yeah, waive visas, travel documents as well. Now, 9/11 basically changed a lot, as far as that is concerned. But there were people who didn't have travel documents that were allowed to go in basically with their driver's license or some other form of identification. With the hostile environment that is in the United States now when it comes to immigration, and we see the treatment that even Puerto Rico is getting, being a part of the United States.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't be too comfortable and too reliant on the United States. So we have to be extreme. We have to be even more prepared. One of our
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
I think one of the areas is we need to be more inclusive as far as people with disabilities. We're looking at that with the shelters, trying to ensure that at least for certain the emergency medical centers are, the wheelchairs can turn in their bathrooms and things like that. But and we've been looking at trying to incorporate people with hearing and visual impairments as well. So it is a small department, and we're trying to work through quite a long list.
Big job. huge job.
You're getting there.
And many hazards.
Yes. One of our listeners has written and said, I would like to know if there are any measures that are put in place to aid elderly people with boarding up their homes. I do understand that they should go to a shelter if necessary. But in the event, God forbid, there is a direct hit and boarding up could have helped safeguard their homes so that they can return to it sooner after the all clear has been given, allowing for space for persons who cannot return home quickly. So safeguarding people's homes, so even if they have to leave, that they may be in a condition for them to be able to return to their homes. Thus freeing up the space for those people those persons who may not have that luxury.
Yeah, I mean, Cayman kind, as we know, people are going to assist in the community with their neighbours, and in this case with the elderly, I'd like to think, well, definitely I'll put money on that someone would assist with that person to help board up their property. But another thing we do have in the community is the CERTs, the Community Emergency Response Teams, and we're actually training more and more as we go on. But those people are key people which are pre-positioned in their communities. And one of the training aspects is vulnerability and capacity assessment. And basically what that means is that the people that are in the CERT teams are going out in their community. Just when they think that they know their community well, this training just makes them even more aware of the things that are around them. Because, some people are the other way. You may live next door to someone for 10 years, but you may not know who they are. Okay, so that training aspect has got the CERTs out into their community and identified that vulnerability group. So straight away, they would have a list put together that we would be aware of, and those names of those persons would be on there. And in the event that they do have a disaster, then those people can go and act and help those people first before anyone else. So they're a key asset to use in the community. I know that Simon was saying earlier that we're just trying to keep the sustainability going. And if there are any other community groups in Grand Cayman and even Little Cayman, we're looking at establishing a CERT team there later on in the year. We've just had one with Savannah Meadows, so reaching out to them as well. Congrats on their training. So, yeah, there are people there that are going to be able to assist in the community, especially with the elderly.
Okay, and I just want to pass on some information to our listening and viewing audience as well. I looked at CUC's website, for instance. If you go onto their website, and they have, a page there that talks about disaster preparedness, what they do, and I'll just read very quickly a portion, one paragraph in relation to it. It says, therefore, CUC maintains a comprehensive year-round preparation program to guarantee its readiness for hurricanes or other natural disasters. The company's principal disaster preparation objectives are twofold: to ensure that all practical precautions are taken in advance to minimize, prevent, and protect against the risk of injury to staff and loss of or damage to CUC's property during the hurricane, and to ensure that a predetermined plan exists for the restoration of electricity in a post-hurricane situation. An integral part of CUC's preparation program is CUC's Hurricane Committee, comprised of key personnel within the operating division. The committee the committee's responsibilities include ensuring the comprehensive preparation measures are in place prior to a hurricane season, maintaining the company's hurricane command center located at CUC's North Sound Road plant in a full state of preparedness, and reviewing and revising CUC's official hurricane manual annually to for distribution to staff. So here's a good example of a good corporate citizen being prepared. And we would hope and trust that there are many corporate citizens out there who are prepared to do the same. And not only just to lift up their staff or lift up their operations center and relocate it to some other jurisdiction, but to also be committed to this jurisdiction as well.
Yes, and they do a lot of work. And there are many companies that are 100% committed to Cayman and will prepare rigorously. And we actually are happy to come out and assist too. If you want us to do hazard awareness presentations to your staff, or even assist with your business continuity plan development, we won't write it for you, but we will help you. All hazard plan, look at the various components, identification of your critical functions, because it's the companies that do prepare that tend to get back up quickest. And maybe CUC's in a different category because they're a critical and sole provider. But when you're up against competition, those that kind of get back on their feet quickest are the ones that tend to survive best.
Okay, we're going to go to a commercial break. When we return, two areas that I want to talk about. I want to talk about overseas assistance, what can be rendered to us, what we render to others, especially with many of our sister overseas territories in the Eastern Caribbean, likely to be hit by a hurricane before it reaches here. And how do we balance the tourism product and the fact that tourists may be on the island during a hurricane, and we balance their safety and getting them out early enough, balancing that against the wishes of the tourism industry who may want them to remain because they may feel, well, the hurricane isn't here yet. We have had those challenges before. Have we addressed those challenges? Are we able to overcome them now? Those conversations will continue right after this short break.
They say cleaning your house never killed anyone, but why take chances? Spend your time doing what you love and leave the rest to Roper's Janitorial. Complete janitorial service for commercial, industrial, and residential with 24-hour emergency service. Roper's Janitorial, 949-2511. Email janitorial@ropers.ky. Take back your life and get the job done right the first time. Roper's Janitorial, 949-2511.
CTMH Doctors Hospital Pharmacy, formerly known as Professional Pharmacy, would like to thank the Cayman communities for their loyal support these past 18 years. Our staff work towards healthcare excellence and providing the most current and up-to-date training with pharmaceutical care. Thorough background checks and follow-up consultations is only the beginning. Your safety is our concern. Our staff are respected healthcare professionals whose job requires careful and precise calculations. Thank you for being a part of our family and for choosing CTMH Doctors Hospital Pharmacy, where we prepare to provide exceptional care. At CTMH Doctors Hospital Pharmacy, we care about your health.
Get set to get wet at the Flowers 1 Mile Sea Swim on Saturday, June 15th. Be a part of the world's richest open water event with over $100,000 in cash and prizes to be won. 1 in 7 wins. Celebrating 27 years with Swim and Win. Random prizes including smartphones, tablets, airline tickets to London, New York, Rome, Portugal, Dublin, Los Angeles, Brazil, Mexico, Toronto, Montego Bay, and more. No race day registration and limited to 1,000 swimmers. So register online today. Visit flowersseaswim.com for more information. All registration fees will be donated to the Special Olympics Cayman Islands. The 27th Annual Flowers 1 Mile Sea Swim on Saturday, June 15th. Proud sponsors include the Flowers Group, the Department of Tourism, Davenport Development, the Cayman Compass, Remax, Red Sail Sports, DART, and the Ritz-Carlton Grand Cayman.
Support our port, support our tourism.
Across the Caribbean, our competitors have built piers that give cruise ship passengers a better arrival and departure experience. How can we expect to compete if we don't meet passengers' expectations?
Looking forward, looking bright.
Learn more and spread spread the word.
Support our port, support our tourism.
For the Record with Orrett Connor.
Initiating system.
For information that matters. For the Record with Orrett Connor. Continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're talking about hurricane preparedness, hurricane season coming up starting the 1st of June of this year. So conversation is taking place with Mr. Simon Boxall, who is the acting Deputy Director of Hazard Management, Cayman Islands. And also with us we have Mr. Eddie Miller, who is the Disaster Management for the Cayman Islands Red Cross. So 2 questions posed earlier: balancing or tourism product, the fact that tourists may be here wanting to enjoy their vacations, but the threat of a hurricane is here. When do we ensure that we move them from the islands to avoid any catastrophe as far as they're concerned, and also our interaction with other countries or preparedness. If, for instance, the Red Cross was called upon to assist other jurisdictions, what do we have in terms of a fallback for us, during the hurricane season, replacement of supplies and all of those things. So.
I mean, elaborating on that side of it first. As we know, during Irma and Maria a couple of years ago, we know that we sent a team over to the British Virgin Islands from here, members of the RCIPS and a lot of other volunteers to help out with the assistance of the clear-up. And I know relief supplies are obviously delegated and coordinated to assist those overseas territories, overseas branches as we call it, in the Red Cross fraternity. Those things are there to assist, and it's also very important to make sure we're not complacent sending all our key personnel to those places. So that is definitely taken into consideration. Also, there are members, there's a regional intervention team, which is also part of the Red Cross, which it's coexisting people who are trained to a certain level to assist with the overseas territories in the event that they need our assistance. Along with relief supplies, one good thing that came out of the British Virgin Islands was the cash relief program, and basically that was a tool that was used next to in-kind donations to help the citizens of the country get back and running, and it also provided cash and funding for them so they could use it within their community. Because as we know, it's one thing being offered or given donations of tents or tarpaulins, all those things from other countries, but it does affect the economy at some stage. So it's important that the program like the cash program is there so you could go out and buy those things from within your community, so it helps the infrastructure and you can get back on track. So that's a great tool, and we went there and we heard a lot about the training in BVI, and we're hoping that we can bring that to Cayman. I know some people are interested in it, and there was a lot of work, and it was a proven success in the British Virgin Islands.
Okay, we have a phone call. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yes, good morning, Mr. O'Connor.
Good morning, sir.
And good morning to you guests too.
Morning, sir. How you doing?
Morning.
Okay. Well, my greatest concern with CUC is the CUC plant, where it's located in the North Sound, so close to the ocean. If we were to have a tidal wave come in that area, I think it could cause some serious damage to the plant. So I think government should start thinking ahead of time in order of building another plant on the island, which is further inland and away from the ocean. Thank you.
Okay. I'm wondering, caller, whether or not CUC has already recognized that in the installation of new generators and everything else, that they have already taken that into consideration. Maybe someone knows. Maybe I'll read a little bit more here on their website to see if they actually address that issue as well.
It's a very interesting question.
Yes,
I don't know whether you want to read that while I tackle
that. Sure. Yes.
Tourism.
Go right ahead, Simon.
So on the tourism question, I think the hotels want to minimize their liability, so it's in their interest to get the people out as quickly as they can. And we obviously have reputational issues. The Cayman Islands, if they go through a horrific experience. In these days of social media and all this, it's likely to end up plastered across CNN and everything. So we have a vested interest too in ensuring that they get off the island as well. They do end up getting dropped off at the airport really early, which I think presents a challenge for the Cayman Islands Airports Authority. In the old days, I remember we used to have empty seats on the plane next to, occasional empty seats. These days they're like booked up, like 4 months in advance, every seat. So they're turning up at the airport without tickets. In the past, Cayman Airways would fly up into tropical storm force winds. These days, they want to get their, $45-50 million jets. I don't know how much they cost. They want to get them safely to somewhere within, 12 hours of impacts of the wind. It presents challenges. We have a support team, the evacuation emergency support team. They liaise closely with the consular agencies. Cayman Airways is a huge asset for us, regionally too, with the relief. I mean, none of them rest of them overseas territories have jets.
Yes. And they proved their value during and after Hurricane Ivan. Oh, gosh.
Back and forth as fast as they could. I mean, you have so many insights because you went through it, Mr. Stacey, in a position of, you were, so senior in government at the time, a National Recovery Coordinator, everything. You probably have more insights. But just looking at it today, we take the evacuation process seriously. CEDA sits on the Cayman Islands Tourism Association, the Department of Tourism. We have a robust group of people that are looking at this issue of evacuation and getting tourists off. We don't have very much shelter space, so that's another issue. It's not like we can.
And the airport is not not a shelter. So,
and we worry that we'll be left with hundreds of people at the airport with the storm approaching and having to shelter people. It's quite a high probability that it will happen. But ideally, you mentioned, I think, insurance. One of you mentioned some of the travel insurance. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Can we cover that after we take the break? We're going to take one caller, and then I think after that caller we'll go to a break and we'll talk about insurance after. Okay. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yeah, good morning again. This is Raymond Scott here. Mr. Simon, in consideration to the weather pattern and being prepared and thoughtful about the possibilities in the times gone, we used to wait for the hurricanes to come through the Caribbean, but with the change in the season and the climate, etc., they can develop right around the Cayman Islands or between Cayman Islands and Central America, or even the western tip of South America, Colombia, and about there, and have only about 2 days' notice. That's something we need to be thinking about because of Paloma. I remember it was raining, bad weather, raining on and off for days. And then Paloma developed and came right across Cayman Brac. That was our worst modern-day disaster in history since the 32 storm. So that's something for us to be very thoughtful and considerate about, that the possibility that of systems developing right around these islands between Central America and the Cayman Islands with just a few days' notice or quick thing like that. We hope we never have it, but we got to think about it because Mother Nature is just seems to be getting worse, and it's predicted for storms to become greater.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond, and it's so true. And our statistical peak for hurricane season is actually the middle of October, partly because what you were talking about, those storms that develop in the Western Caribbean, sometimes right over the top of us, sometimes, like you say, off the coast of Nicaragua, Honduras, San Andres and places down there. The waters tend to be warmer in the latter part of the season, and so they generate some of the most powerful storms that we've seen, in history, have developed in our region. Sandy was an example. There are many very, very powerful hurricanes that have developed in our region, and like you say, you can see rapid intensification occurring we're not very good at actually forecasting intensification of hurricanes. So we've always got to use caution when it comes to that, not counting on the fact. And when they're developing right over the top of us, it's very difficult to analyze the threat level and how quickly that sort of will occur. But there have been a couple of storms too. You mentioned the rain before Paloma. I remember the rain before Mitch, like 2 weeks of solid rain. It just felt like it was raining all the time. And then the trees come out of the ground easier when when it's all.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, you got to prepare. That's why we've always got to have a bit of preparedness done already, not reacting when things threaten.
Okay, we're going to take a commercial break. Folks, please stay tuned. The conversation with Mr. Simon Boxall and Mr. Eddie Miller will continue after this short commercial break.
Since 1993, Rotary Central has worked diligently each year to provide quality bus shelters to our community. A traveling convenience to our school children, the elderly, young people going to work, guest workers, and visitors using the public bus. We, Rotary Central, help you, our advertisers, make it happen. Your marketing dollar travels a far way. Positioning your message, your product, your services, your presence in over 83 bus shelters. Every dollar you spend, every advert you place helps to build another bus shelter, providing modest comfort for Cayman travelers. Reserve space now on the only billboard medium in the Cayman Islands. Email rotaryshelters@gmail.com. rotaryshelters@gmail.com. The Bus Shelters, a partner in community convenience. Another inspiration program by Rotary Central Cayman Islands.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
Hi, I'm thinking of buying a car from the States. Which port do you ship out of?
Hi, we ship out of Miami, Houston, and Brooklyn. Just let us know your port of choice and we can provide you with a quotation and answer any questions you may have on ensuring and protecting your vehicle during its journey.
Shipping shore to shore, Seaboard.
The Cayman Islands Conference of Seventh-day Adventists invites you to their 125th year anniversary social at the East End Heritage Park.
On Saturday, June the 1st, 2019, starting at 8 p.m.
Come celebrate 125 years of Adventism in these islands.
There will be food and fun galore.
All are invited.
It starts at 8.
So make it a date.
And don't be late. See you there.
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands and sponsored by One Trade X. Join Money Sense this Thursday, 7:30 a.m. as we interview Rob Tate, CEO and founder of Global Rational Capital, one of Cayman's newest and locally managed investment companies. Listen as we quiz Rob on how he goes about researching companies and deciding what to invest in. Tune in this Thursday, 7:30 a.m. and learn how to improve your investment research processes too. Follow us on Twitter and tweet questions to @MoneySense Radio. Money Sense, the only personal finance radio show in the Cayman Islands. Brought to you with the support of One Trade X.
For the record, with Orrett Connor.
Initiating system. For information that matter. For the record, with Orrett Connor. Continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me, Mr. Simon Boxall and Mr. Eddie Miller. We're talking about hurricane preparedness in the Cayman Islands, hurricane season starting on the 1st of June. In relation to the caller who spoke about his concerns about CUC and its location, on their website it says, further to other issues that they're prepared to address. It says, furthermore, each CUC vice president is responsible for yearly preparedness as outlined in the Hurricane Manual and for conducting regular reviews of his or her division's activities in this regard. These activities include guaranteeing the availability of generating units, emergency generators, line vehicles, and other productions and T and D, that's transmission and distribution equipment before, during, and after a storm, ensuring that the companies online hurricane center designed to withstand maximum winds of 150 miles an hour is readily adaptable for emergency usage and training personnel for its first aid and other safety purposes. CUC has comprehensive procedures and action plans in place for preparing its staff and plant facilities for an approaching hurricane and restoring power to its customers as quickly, efficiently, and safely as possible after the storm has passed. So obviously they have taken into consideration their location, the vulnerabilities of that location, and taken steps to mitigate against that as well. Otherwise, I don't think that they would feel so comfortable in terms of staying there.
Sure, you're right. I mean, obviously it's a vulnerability. We saw the hospital generator get flooded in Hurricane Ivan, and they now have flood barriers. So I'm sure that they're aware of the threat and that they've planned for it.
Okay. We'd like to talk now about our interaction with the UK. The UK's the lessons learned after Hurricane Ivan, for instance, and how those lessons learned were put in place during Hurricane Maria and Irma as well. And then I'd also, Simon, like you just mentioned, the insurance policies that the Cayman Islands have has in place in relation to the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance facility, a facility that was established in 2007. I remember going to London with the then leader of government business, the Honourable Kurt Tibbetts, and we were
founding members of that.
Yep. We were at a conference there, and it was mooted at that point in time that this was being considered, and the then leader of government business kept track of what was happening with it, with its establishment, and when it was put into place, we instantly joined up. Not only did we join up, but some of those overseas territories who were not able financially to put up the $1 million that was necessary, seed money at that point in time, for the premiums, that other overseas territories assisted them in that endeavor as well.
It's not profit.
Yeah. So if we can talk about UK, Mounts Bay, and I think lessons learned after Ivan and how those things were put in place to assist other overseas territories first.
Thank you. I'll let Eddie jump in on the UK as well, if that's okay. I do think, from the perspective of how it's the relationship in terms of disaster management has improved and evolved since Hurricane Ivan. I think certainly, the Ivan experience, I think, highlighted the fact that the support could have been better, and I think they recognize that, and we are seeing additional support. We've got an exercise coming up with them, with a helicopter. They help pay for that, not just for Cayman, but they've sort of identified it as a regional resource for disaster preparedness. They're helping to support communications. If we lose communications, they have a system, I think, again, throughout the Caribbean now, overseas territories. But they take disaster preparedness very seriously, and I think, they recognize that they've got reputational issues.
Serious ones.
Serious ones. So, Marie, and, anyway, they were suggestions that their response there wasn't quick enough, wasn't robust enough, wasn't broad enough. I think they did help a lot. Maybe the initial stages of it weren't quite quick enough, but I think that they've shown an increasing understanding of, that there are issues that need to be addressed, that, even Cayman, and Tortola, British Virgin Islands, which, is fairly prosperous as a per capita, that there are people that are really suffering in the aftermath of these events, and, people breaking out of the prisons in British Virgin Islands. So they've actually got a pretty good asset now out there with, I don't know whether you want to get into it in terms of the Mounts Bay and the vessels.
I mean, Mounts Bay is basically part of the Royal Auxiliary Fleet, which is, as you know, part of the Royal Navy. And last week or the week before, we were in Miami for the regional Foreign Commonwealth Office Disaster Managers meeting, and they were actually there. One of the ship's staff was there to give a presentation on the capabilities and the importance of it in the event that we need their help. And it was just amazing the things that they can offer us. And obviously they're going to be tracking the storms all around the region, so technically Mounts Bay won't be far behind in the event that we would need their support and assistance. And like Simon said, it's got helicopter capabilities, capability of producing water, and a large amount
of supplies.
And a large amount of supplies. Just everything that we would basically need.
Technical teams.
But we did see from a logistical standpoint that in the case of after Hurricane Ivan, for instance,
the generator
Grenada got hit. Yeah. Other Eastern Caribbean countries were affected adversely as well. Yep. As a result of that, by the time they reached the Cayman Islands, they didn't have much to offer in terms of supplies because they had already been exhausted in the other areas. Have they addressed that issue, or should we? The broader question is really, should we place our major reliance, not our sole reliance, but our major reliance on that assistance? Or should we continue to do what we're doing here in the Cayman Islands and try to be as self-sufficient as we possibly can?
Absolutely. I think definitely continue to work on self-sufficiency, of course. I do think, though, that they've, in the past, like you say, they would respond to Grenada or Jamaica. I think there is a recognition that at the bottom of our passport it says, British citizens. We're actually British citizens too, so I think there's been definitely scaled up. The discussions apparently even happen in number 10 now. When the overseas territories get hit, they want to respond in a much more robust way. I think they recognise that maybe we were treated kind of differently and like a part, and not really kind of fully anything to do with the UK, maybe just like another island out there. I think that's changed, and I think there's been recognition that there may be issues with the security that they're willing to step in and the support. In the past, they were not willing to touch that, but I do think that they want to respect a degree of autonomy. They'd like to see us continue to build resilience and capacity on our own and become more self-sufficient, and I think that's good, but knowing that they might be there to assist and support, I think is reassuring, and definitely I think it's good. I think it's positive that they're taking that more seriously.
And there was back to that meeting we had in Miami a couple of weeks ago, the disaster management meeting. There was a large contingent of MOD staff there, and it was actually really good to meet these people face to face. 10, 15 people there from all different ranks, all different military services, and they're all part of the joint force in JFHQ from the UK. So they're there to assist us if we need it. And like you said, let's not ignore the fact we should be self-sufficient, but these are people there that can also assist us with support if we need it. So it's another tool that we can use.
And I think they'd like to see us become more self-sufficient. I mean, one of the areas they're trying to encourage is a regional mechanism, a rapid deployment teams. The overseas territories can support each other. I mean, I think obviously they probably want to minimize their liabilities. They don't want a big payout. So the stronger we can be, the better, at least in their eyes. And that's what we should be aiming for ourselves. But they are working on areas like crisis communications, tracking of missing people,
crisis hub, and
supporting some training initiatives. So, I mean, you've got to give some credit where credit is due, and I think there's definitely been an increased level of support and just attention in this area, and a recognition of the issues and the potential for.
Okay. Yeah. Simon, very, very, very quickly before we go to the break, the importance of that that regional insurance scheme that's in place and that came out is a part of it.
Caribbean Catastrophic Reinsurance Facility.
Yes.
It's an interesting thing. It's what's known as a parametric insurance.
Yes.
So it's been criticized in the past because places have got hit and you're paying these big premiums and they're like, why don't we get any money? We got slammed by... it's actually got to hit your kind of capital, your sort of critical infrastructure. There's sort of weird ways of measuring storm surge. So it doesn't include the wave trapping element. So if the wind is blowing the water ashore, you've also got waves, and so you might have like 10 foot of surge, but they've calculated only 4 feet.
Yes.
So people are like, what's going on with the payout? You know?
They've just made some adjustments after complaints because this is
not as many as you'd think.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they've added like a flood component, but no, they haven't. But it's a not-profit thing, but it provides initial liquidity in the immediate aftermath, and we've actually got. We've been building up our own fund as well here. Yes, the disaster fund locally, which is great. It's a good move by government. But that initial liquidity, you need money to fund that response and recovery phase. Yeah. It can be pretty useful if you get slammed. So I think it's like an insurance policy. If you have a major accident, in a car, it's not going to cover a lot of stuff.
Right.
But if you really get hit, it's probably useful.
A bit of peace of mind is better than none.
True. We're going to take our last commercial break. When we return, I want to give both of you an opportunity to get the message out there to our listening and viewing audience about hurricane preparedness for this hurricane season. Folks, please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly.
Why my wife always asking if I'm in a rush when she's the one always making us late?
Might as well say, yeah, I'm in a rush and go buy the new Toyota Rush you've been talking about. Cause they on sale this month. Doll teacher.
The super special spring SUV sale at Vant Motors. Save up to $4,400 with SUVs starting at only $23,500, like the 7-seater Toyota Rush. Save money, get cash back, or use the discount to upgrade features on the SUV of your choice, including the Toyota RAV4, the Fortuner, the Rush, or the Ford EcoSport. It's our super special spring SUV sale. Only at Vant Motors, Walkers Road.
Since 1993, Rotary Central has worked diligently each year to provide quality bus shelters to our community. A traveling convenience to our school children, the elderly, young people going to work, guest workers, and visitors using the public bus. We, Rotary Central, help you, our advertisers, make it happen. Your marketing dollar travels a far way. Positioning your message, your product, your services, your presence in over 83 bus shelters. Every dollar you spend, every advert you place helps to build another bus shelter, providing modest comfort for Cayman travelers. Reserve space now on the only billboard medium in the Cayman Islands. Email rotaryshelters@gmail.com. rotaryshelters@gmail.com. The Bus Shelters, a partner in community convenience. Another inspiration program by Rotary Central Cayman Islands.
Real estate agents and developers, as well as dealers in precious metals and stones, have until Wednesday, May 29th to register with the Department of Commerce and Investment. The DCI is the agency with responsibility for ensuring real estate agents and developers, as well as dealers in precious metals and stones, are compliant with international obligations relating to anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism. DCI urges businesses to register as soon as possible to avoid missing the deadline on May 29th. Registration forms are available from www.dci.gov.ky or the DCI counter at the Government Administration Building. For further details, please contact enforcement@dci.gov.ky.
Headlines. With the latest headlines.
Headlines. All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international. Headlines. Turning to international news. Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. Radio Cayman News. Headlines. Your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
For the record, with Orrett Connor.
Initiating system. For information that matter. For the record, with Orrett Connor. Continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Opportunity to talk about things? Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're on the last leg of the show. If we have no callers now, what we're going to do is we're going to close off the phone lines to give our guests an opportunity to get any additional critical points that they want to get across to our listening and viewing audience as well. I just want to remind you that the conversation is taking place with Mr. Simon Boxall, who's the Acting Deputy Director of Hazard Management, Cayman Islands. And also with us we have Mr. Aidan Miller, who's the Disaster Management for the Cayman Islands Red Cross here in the Cayman Islands. Gentlemen.
Okay, so I really would like to go over the supplies list.
Yes.
Again, because hearing about it more is going to be ingrained in our memories, and I know that we keep on going on about it. You need to be prepared for this, okay? Another thing that I mentioned previously was that people going out worrying about panicking to buy all these items last minute, okay? You can do yourself a massive favour there. Every week, without fail, we'll have to go shopping, or sometimes twice a week for a larger family. When you're going shopping, building up to the hurricane season, these items that we've stipulated before, just include one or two of them into your weekly shop. In some cases, it's going to be $1, $2 max, okay? Just do that over the gradual weeks and months, then you'll soon realise that you've got half a food aisle or items in your house, you know? So that's a great way of doing it without going out and spending hundreds of dollars in one time, so to speak.
And in the event that they never have to use it, there are programs in place for them to be distributed to people who need it as well during the course of the year, right?
Of course, yeah, there is. I mean, you can donate items to us, but obviously there's loads of other NGOs where you can donate things, Feed Our Future, all those sort of things. But, things with perishable, non-perishable items, canned foods, some of those things can last 2-3 years, for example. So it could be a case if you've got ample space in your property or a garage, you could keep them out there. Batteries last 5, 6, 7 years, longer than that now as well. So, yeah, you can keep a lot of those items for a long time.
And those big eaters that you have in your family, just tell them that food is not to be eaten.
Just put a locking key, yes. Buy a safe, put it in the safe. No. So I think it's important just to go over that list again. Just get it out there, people driving to work. So, okay, so drinking water, 1 gallon per person per day. So you've got your family, it might be 3 gallons for your 3 people in your house. Non-perishable food items, canned food. Special needs for the sick, disabled, extra prescription medication, special foods, dietary requirements. There's a lot more of those out there these days. Lighting, 2 flashlights per person. If you get the batteries are there, make sure you've got them. Or if you've got the wind-up radios and flashlights, they're really great as well. Tools and materials, can openers, non-electric. Disposable utensils, cutlery, plates and cups. And like we said earlier, personal hygiene, sanitation, health kits, make sure you've got those things in place as well. And following on from pets, we mentioned earlier, if you are deciding that you need to go to a shelter and you unfortunately cannot take the pet with you or you have to leave it at your property, you need to make sure that they've got an ample supply of food for the time you're going to be away as well. And a lot of people forget that. And cash is another good thing that you should have on hand, if fortunately you've got some cash, that is, to put aside, because as we know, ATMs could be down and you need that right away to get back in action. So,
okay.
Anything to add,
Simon? Let's hear from Hazard Management.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having us on as always.
Yeah, it's great.
Really appreciate the support. Yep, I agreed with the list that Eddie listed. Once you see the storm coming, turn your freezer down to the coldest in your fridge. Start making ice. If you can get the plastic bags, fill them up about 3/4 of the way full and just start stuffing them in the freezer, so you've got some drinking water and keeps it cold. My 2 real concerns that I really want to emphasize is this issue of anchoring. People who've been through a really strong, powerful hurricane in the past, convincing themselves that nothing could possibly worse. They just can't conceive of anything, with a bigger wind field, larger surge, more damaging waves. Every hurricane is different. They all come from different angles, and we do believe that a 20-foot surge is possible, which is twice this height of Hurricane Ivan. And the further away, the wind tends to wraps around the eye, and it's got a shorter distance to travel as it's closer to the eye, so it's increasing in speed, velocity. So if you were up in North Side or West Bay, you were it was 21 miles at the closest point of approach. You were probably 30 or 40 miles away from the center of circulation. So it could have been stronger. So a lot of people have got to be careful with this idea that, their past experience is the worst that can happen. It can be worse. It's crazy to think of. And then the other thing is this problem, people focusing on the category. And the category, we tend to think of the 3, 4, 5, the major hurricane as the significant threat. But the category is only measuring the wind, and it's not measuring up very well to the storm surge. So you can get a category 1 or a 2 that brings a lot of surge, and you can get a category 4 or 5 that doesn't bring very much. So tune into the National Weather Service. Waves are another threat altogether. Be careful being along the coast, because the waves can do enormous damage and can reach into even second-floor buildings. But the surge is not a coastal threat. It can come miles inland. So if you're in a single-story house, even 2 to 3 miles away from the shore, be aware that there's a possibility that if we have a very large system, which is the ones that tend to bring the most surge, you could be looking at water coming up to the roof of your house and leaving you nowhere to go, and it happens very quickly. So people think, it'll take a few hours for the water to come up. It tends to happen in a matter of minutes when it happens.
And for those persons who live in areas that are already prone to flooding just under normal circumstances, your advice to them would be what?
For everybody, I would find out what the elevation is of your ground floor. Are you 5 feet above sea level? Are you 6 feet above sea level? Listen closely, but I would say you've got to have a plan. And these days, the planes are full all the time, 4 months in advance, so you can't count on evacuation. So, and we are going to get pet shelters very shortly, because we're worried people might risk their lives, but you should plan ahead about where you're going to shelter. The food, the water are critical, but the shelter, you've got, especially if you've got kids and stuff, you've got to find a place to go if you're not sure that you're going to be safe. So whether that's calling somebody who's got an office building or going to one of the government shelters, the Red Cross shelter when it gets back up. But the shelter, I just dread to think that we're going to get hit by a Category 2 storm or something with a 15-foot surge, and people don't evacuate, and the next day we wake up, we've got thousands of people drowned. I mean, that gives me, it worries me, because it's possible. I mean, we can run the models, the Taos models with NOAA and the NHC, and we can see that twice the amount of surge is possible, and it worries me that people are just saying, well, this is just a major hurricane's problem. It's not. It can happen with a Category 1 or a 2. Yeah,
so we just can't be complacent. Don't be complacent.
Keep tuned in to Radio Cayman. Use your local sources of information. At the moment, the U.S. government provides storm surge information for U.S. mainland and U.S. islands, but at the moment it's not being extended out to the rest of the Caribbean. We do have various modeling in terms of providing maps to the public before an impact, before a strike. We will hopefully be able to good advice, issue evacuation orders if necessary, possibly even provide maps that they can see where they're living and their elevation. These things are all in development, though. We're not quite there yet, so people need to err on the side of caution, I think.
Yes, and also to bear in mind that by taking risks, they then put other people's safety at risk as well, those who may have to attempt to rescue them.
It's so true. And we particularly see that as the storms cross us, those coming from the east to the west. The all clears issued, but at that point, with the counterclockwise rotation, we're seeing very large waves impacting 7 Mile Beach and stuff, and they're very visually beautiful to look at, but I think they every 1,000 or 2,000 waves is twice as high as the average one. So you see people there looking at these amazing waves, and then suddenly they get swept into the sea, and like you say, they risk other people's lives, the first responders. So stand well back from the sea as well.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much. All of the information that you provided to our listening and viewing audience, and we hope that they take it all to heart and that they take the necessary actions and follow the advice that you have given to them. Thank you very much for being
Thanks
here.
for this opportunity.
Thanks very much.
Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them, especially now with the upcoming hurricane season as well. We always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want or even those who crave. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Sterling Dwayne Banks at 12:15 for Talk Today. Join me on Friday when I will have the official opposition here with us again. And as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.
For the Record is brought to you by Vamped Motors, the only authorized Ford and Toyota dealership serving the Cayman Islands. Cayman Pharmacy Group, with a location in West Bay and professional pharmacy at CTMH Doctors Hospital. The Cayman Pharmacy Group has a location for you just around the corner. Seaboard Marine, with over 35 shipping ports, find your shipping solution by calling 949-4977 or visit seaboardmarine.com for competitive rates. Rotary Central, for more than 110 years, Rotary members have used their passion, energy, and intelligence to take action on sustainable projects. And Roper's Janitorial, complete janitorial service for commercial, industrial, and residential. They get the job done right every time.